Good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today in the University of Warwick, the PG Cert, PG Dip and MSc in Medical Education for Healthcare Professionals. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here today. The running order for today is Mr. Dermot Brannock, who is our Director of Academic Affairs, is going to have a fireside chat with Dr. Valois. They're not beside a fire and they're not together, unfortunately, as I've said before, but we'll pretend they're having a fireside chat. They're going to talk to you about medical education, advances in pedagogy, essentially the professionalization of medical education and how this program is structured, how it is new, how it is unique, and what to expect if you were to participate on it. They will also be joined by our program manager for this program, Jane Igo, who's with us today. Hi, Jane. And she'll be talking to you through, I suppose, the day-to-day commitments and what to expect on the program as well. So I'm going to hand you over to Dermot and Val.
Thanks a million, Rebecca, and lovely to see everyone today. So just very briefly to introduce myself, as Rebecca said, I lead the academic function in IHEED and have overall responsibility for our relationship with the University of Warwick and for oversight of the programme. But the operations of the programme and the quality of the programme is really brought to you by Professor Valois. Val, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi. Well, I don't know about that. I think we work together as a good team, Dermot, but lovely to see you all. I'm Valois. I'm a clinician by trade, but retired now. So I worked first in secondary care and then in primary care in family medicine, but increasingly followed a journey which I hope we're encouraging you all to take. I did my master's in medical education actually in Maastricht in the Netherlands, and then went on to do a PhD there. And that took me to work in 3 medical schools around the UK, in London, in Manchester, and finally I ended my career at that stage as Dean of one of the new medical schools in the Midlands near Birmingham, Keele. And over the years too, I've worked now in over 40 countries looking at medical education, both undergraduate and postgraduate. But my passion has always been that we should be able to reach out and bring medical education opportunities to people in low and middle income countries, because as Nelson Mandela says, education is the way to change the world. And it's important that you too build careers in that by doing either a certificate, better still, if you can, a master's. And Dermot, I'll come back to you now, because as we chat, we'll be really highlighting to you why that's beginning increasingly to be important. And why in our current programme it's making a difference. Back to you, Dermot. I'm getting rather Irish, aren't I? I'm withering on.
we're rubbing off on you. Val, that's, I suppose, we've seen the landscape change in the past couple of decades, and I think one of the things to explore is why are we moving towards this greater professionalization of education within healthcare? Why is it no longer, I suppose, the side project that someone might have? Its recognition has increased dramatically over the last couple of years, hasn't it? Or last couple of decades, I should say.
Yes. For 2 reasons, I think. Firstly, we're now realizing that there is a science to learning. We know much more about how the brain works, and as people can do MRI scans and look at brain functioning when people are doing tasks, we're learning much more about processing, about how to construct learning and how to really help the learning move forward. And I think that's impacting on those we have on our current course, that they're learning why things work and about educational theory. And that does make a difference to your practice. And I think everybody's finding that. And secondly, I think academic institutions, whereas research was always a way you progressed up to being a professor or worked up that track, increasingly now, I think all around the world, universities and postgraduate deaneries are realizing that you can get promotion through a teaching track. So if you're doing a master's and you're doing teaching and you're doing your own research to build an evidence base for what works, Universities are promoting people through that route too. So I think it's just a sudden recognition that it does matter. It's not just teach one, do one. Yes, learn one, teach one, do one. I've almost forgotten it now. So past tense. There is a whole science to learning.
I think you're right, and I think that science then is underpinned by the need to have a formal qualification, that you've got a benchmark, and I think that's where the growth in medical education qualifications has come in, and there's gone from being a tiny handful of them 20 years ago to there being many options available now, and that I think education very much follows what the need of the profession is, and the fact that there are so many of these is speaking to the recognition of it. But
go on, Dermot, ask me the question.
No, I was actually the one I was going to ask was, the rationale for somebody coming onto the course though is often more than I simply want to have better presentation or communication skills. Why have we built an entire master's qualification around this? Why is it more than simply what you could do on a weekend course of how to present better, how to be more articulate? What's the depth that we're getting to?
Yeah, and perhaps why did you entice me as I get to the end of my career to undertake this, to work with you, Dermot, when I was at the stage where I was probably looking for new opportunities. But I did my master's in Maastricht, which was international. We had people from all continents except Australia, and it was interprofessional. There were only 3 doctors out of 16 of us on the course. But we had to go to Maastricht for 2 blocks of 12 weeks to learn. And it was amazing to learn from people from other cultures and from other professions. So I've always valued interprofessional training, but also because I think we learn so, and cross-cultural training, because I think we learn so much from others. So, and there are masters out there, but what's special about this one is the learning's online. You do have to set aside about 10 hours a week to do it, but you don't have to travel to do it. But we've also developed very interactive workshops, 1 a week, so which are really important to come to, because what we're developing there is communities of practice. So you meet people from other countries, and I think you'd say, Jane, wouldn't you, those networks are working really well, aren't they? People are actually managed to gain and learn across cultures. So that's why I think this is special for 2 reasons. It's interprofessional and it's interactive as well. We've managed to get that element into it, and that seems to be working very well from the feedback we're getting.
Yeah,
no,
absolutely. And I think one of the things that strikes me about the groups that we have is the application to their professional practice, and even from feedback from the first module, you can see people changing the way they think about the delivery that they're doing and how they're approaching their own teaching. And how do we help people bridge that gap between this is what education theory or frameworks might say and this is how you might apply it in the real world?
It's a good way. I'm just trying to think what I learned from my tutorial group last week. I think I think we're doing it in 2 ways. The way we've built the learning is that you're not just learning something, forgetting it, learning something, forgetting it. It's a spiral curriculum, and grasping learning theories, they say, is very difficult, but we keep taking people back so they revise what they're learning, which is what the scientists are telling us you should do. So we're building learning forward. So not expecting you to remember everything, you're gradually building the learning, and that's really helping people move forward. But also we're using now a lot of interactive exercises in the workshops, so they have to go off and do things and then come back and reflect on it and learn. And that's something called transformational learning, which again is becoming a much better accepted way of helping people learn. So you're learning by doing as well, and people love the interactivity. So you're not just sitting learning in the old-fashioned way. Does that help, Dermot?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, and I think it's, you know, it speaks to the need to be able to apply things to your own teaching situation, your own professional life, means understanding the frameworks, but also then being able to reflect and being able to consider your own strengths and weaknesses and developmental needs, and how important is that kind of self-assessment and reflection on this type of program? Because I'm conscious it's very different than a clinical program where you don't have that same very personal perspective on what you're learning.
Well, we know it's quite difficult to assess yourself, but that peer feedback's very, very valuable. You can learn from your peers. So if you think what we did last week in small groups, everybody works in a small group of 5 or 4, and what they had to practice what we called reflection in action. So I presume many of you are clinicians, so they had to give feedback to a trainee, and two of them had to role play it, and the other person watched using a framework we'd give them called R2C2. So they had to go off and do it, and then one of them observed and gave feedback to it. So they're doing something, they're feeling, I don't know that they felt too uncomfortable, they just enjoy working together, but then they respect each other's views within that, and so they learn from that. Jane, would you like to comment on that, because you watched in my group?
Yes, I think the one thing that always really strikes me with the workshop activities is that we've created this really safe environment for the participants where they can openly ask questions of each other and their facilitator, and they can engage together. And it's been really wonderful to see the journey that everyone's come on together, and the rapport and the relationships that everyone has made in the community of practice. And I think seeing everyone digging in with these new activities that push and challenge everyone has really built those relationships up.
Does that answer your question, Dermot? Thank you, Jane.
It does, and I think, you know, one of the themes of what you're saying throughout is about that community of practice, is about learning from each other, is about shared experiences, and I think Jane's point of creating a safe space for that is really important. But to me, then it goes back to the point you made, Val, about by being an interprofessional and international group, you're not getting one kind of homogenous perspective of we're all family doctors from London. You know,
if I think of that one particular group, there's a guy from Uganda who's a pharmacist. There's a nurse who's Dutch but is working in the UAE. I think she's a doctor from Malaysia. I can't remember the fourth. I can't off my head to think where the fourth one comes from. I think from the Middle East, and they're different age ranges as well. But they learn so much from each other because we've mixed them up, managing to meet in the same time zone. So that time zone goes from Malaysia over to the UK.
And I think, you know, that the different perspectives that they're going to bring from their undergraduate experience will be entirely different. Their professional development that they've done within their own professions will be different, and kind of bringing all of that into one space to discuss how they can become better, more confident educators.
Yes. And they get on well, and they meet in the week when they've got time. Everybody's busy, as I'm sure you all are who are watching, but they meet in the week if they can to discuss the learning. So and others have got very active WhatsApp groups as well, so that they can just ping each other during the day. So we let them communicate as they want, really, but it's adult learning, self-directed adult learning.
And I think that's really important, you know, that when you're doing a program that is online, that is part-time, that you don't ever feel distant from it, that, you know, you've always got people to turn to and ask questions of, be that the program management team or be that your colleagues. I think it's really important that you feel supported as you go through. But one of the, I suppose, there's 2 other areas I wanted to touch on. One is the assessment. You know, if we put ourselves in the shoes of the people on this call thinking about coming onto the program, you know, one of the questions is going to be, right, well, what is the assessment? How will I get through it? You know, what am I going to be judged on this program? You know, I think people will accept that there's, you know, what we're talking about is a very supportive, engaging program, but actually, you know, what are you going to judge me on as part of the program? How will I be assessed?
Well, that's such a really good question. And it depends really. What we're looking at is this is a master's program. So for those going through to the master's level, at the end, you will need to do some research and a piece of academic writing. The final assignment is writing a research paper of 4,000 words. So we've got to make sure you're right from the beginning that we're encouraging writing in English that's going to reach that academic standard, because we don't want anybody to fail at the last hurdle. So your ability to write in English is important, which is why we're asking to look at that before you join us. The other thing that people are finding quite challenging is Warwick at the moment want reflective writing, which means is good because you're learning to reflect, but it does mean you need to learn to write reflectively in the first person as to what you've learned. And we're working on ways of helping you do that from the beginning and looking at perhaps different ways as we move forward. Does that answer the question, Dermot?
No, it does, and I think I'll get into some of the practicalities of actually, you know, what does the assessment look like for each module when I go through the presentation. But I think the premise is that you are able to reflect on what you're learning and how you can apply it. And I think I was to pick out two challenges that people might perceive coming onto this type of program. One is that some of the language around medical education will be new to people. The theories that you're learning will be new, and there's an adaptation there. And the second is the art of writing reflectively, the art of not writing descriptively, but actually going to well, what does this mean and what will I do with it, as opposed to saying just what it was. That certainly takes some adjustment. So yeah, I completely agree. And that being said, though, there is a lot of support and guidance around that. But I think assessment is one that people are always going to be curious on. The other then, and you know, you've spoken a little bit at the start about your own career, but where do you see career opportunities from people coming off a master's in medical education? Now, you know, obviously some people will just do a certificate to be, you know, they're on a path to being a consultant and they need to have it. Others will want to have a really, really deep career in clinical education. But what are some of the areas that people can use this type of qualification in?
Well, I don't think it's just a postgraduate certificate, because I think that's an important first stepping stone for a career, because you think of mine, it was opportunistic all the way through. I jumped from one opportunity to another. So I think it's a good platform to start, and you will build on that in future. You can always come back and do a diploma and master's later on, inshallah, as they say, God willing. But that would be the first step. I think even in some countries, a postgraduate certificate does help you get a pay rise or more recognition. Moving through to a master's, certainly, as I've already said, is viewed as an important step towards promotion, particularly if you're beginning to do some writing and publication around medical education research. And indeed, to come on this program, we want all our tutors to have a master's in medical education, so that they can encourage and role model what it has meant for their careers. And many are people who really benefited. We've got somebody who was a vice dean of teaching in Stellenbosch, and people with really good pedigrees built on a master's in medical education, and role modeling to you all. So I think it's important now, and increasingly I'm saying I've got to speak to medical students next, which I'm sorry I will have to leave at 12:30ish, about future medical education, and I'm encouraging them from early in their career to be thinking about this, because it is the future.
No, it is, and I think it's certainly what it's becoming a recognised normal standard for people involved in the education of others to have specific training in medical education. But the final point then, Val, if I and Jane, actually, if I can tease through what we've spoken about, the international and the interprofessional mix on this program. What variety of teaching are people doing on the program? Because that's another important point. You know, this is a very applied program, which means you'll need to be actively teaching others to engage with it. The groups that you're with, what sort of teaching activities are they carrying out? What sort of roles are they in?
You mean in their own?
Yeah, in their own professional environment.
Jane, do you want to come in on that?
I can indeed. So I suppose it's as varied as the roles that all of the students currently have on the programme. We do have a number of GPs who would often be involved in training junior doctors, and a lot of that would happen on a one-to-one basis. But then we would also have a lot on the programme who would be in a clinical setting, so they might be doing some bedside teaching. Some people who maybe are starting out on their journey to become a faculty member, so they might be a part-time lecturer, so they might be lecturing maybe large groups of students, or there might be some people on the program as well who would be teaching more in a kind of CPD setting, so a smaller sized classroom group of maybe 10 to 20 students, but they tend to be an awful lot of variety, a lot of mix in the program.
Brilliant.
And of course, that's a great opportunity to learn from each other and share experiences. And it seems to be people are challenged experiences of walking into a classroom and finding all the students on their mobile phone, and how do you engage them? A lot of wherever they are in the world or whatever profession, the problems seem to be the same. Tricky problems with students misbehaving, and how to engage. They're learning to solve their home problems together, which is great. How do you engage people? It seems to be one of the biggest challenges we saw last week.
And you know, if I think through the 20 years that I've been involved in postgraduate or professional education, that A is consistent everywhere that I've worked, and B, nobody has found a perfect solution to it yet. But I think yeah, you're absolutely right. It is one of the challenges. But again, having those small group teaching or exploratory sessions where you're debating and discussing is incredibly important. So look, Val, I'm conscious you've got another commitment to go to. So I'm going to share the presentation now and walk you through a lot of the kind of the logistics and the detail of the program, the structure of it, etc. But Val, as always, thank you so much for.
Well, I'll say goodbye to everyone. I should be very careful when I'm carrying my water to the fridge in future.
Yeah.
I see Sheen Rahadra is giving us a little lesson there, and I hope to see some of you on the November course. So
Thank you so much, Val.
Thanks so much, Val.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. So hopefully you can all see my screen now. And what I'm going to do for the next about 20 minutes is just Jane and I will bring you through the structure of the program and all about the background to it and what it covers, etc., and hopefully answer lots of your questions. If you have questions as we go through this, the chat screen is open. So if you just hit chat in the bottom of your window, you can ask us any questions that you want, and either I'll get back to it in the talk or the team will get back to it on chat. One of the things that you will see about this program is you'll notice IHEED sitting alongside the University of Warwick all the time. And to give you a sense of who IHEED are as opposed to the university, so IHEED is an Irish medical education company. We were founded by a family doctor in 2013, and we work with the University of Warwick, with the Royal College of Physicians, the College of General Practitioners, and we work effectively to bring their education programs to a global audience. So we've done that mainly in the field of family medicine. So we've got a lot of family medicine residency programs across, we've got one in Malaysia, we've got one in Saudi, we've a women's health program in UAE. We then have a suite of masters and other postgraduate offerings. and then shorter CME programs. And we've over 400,000 course completions on our platform to date, and that's a range of the shorter programs right up to the more niche, smaller residency programs. But effectively, what we bring to this is a depth of expertise in teaching in an online space. The University of Warwick needs far less of an introduction. They are ranked 8th in the United Kingdom, 62nd in the world. They were very recently ranked 1st in the United Kingdom for teaching excellence, which is something that they and we are incredibly proud of. In the UK, they're in the Russell Group of universities, which is the top research-orientated universities in the United Kingdom. The on-campus program that Warwick has is an incredibly highly regarded program, and this is, I suppose, it's drawn inspiration from that program. But it is important, this program was designed from a blank page, that it is an online program designed for people that are full-time clinicians and part-time learners. And the qualification you get as a Master's of Medical Education for healthcare professionals is the exact same standard as the campus-based program. Warwick don't differentiate because this is an online offering. They simply, it is a postgraduate certificate, diploma, or master's, the same as any other qualification that they offer. That said, I think what you're going to see over the next few slides is the benefit of designing this as an online program from the outset is apparent. So the way this program is structured, so semester 1 is the postgraduate certificate, and this comprises of 3 modules, which are 6 weeks long each. So we'll start off with the essentials of medical education, then we'll get into effective. The point that Val made earlier about a spiral curriculum and about continually refreshing and enhancing what you know, you'll see this threaded throughout. So we'll do a little bit of assessment and feedback for learning in module 1. We'll also look at bits of assessment when it comes to designing a curriculum. And then obviously we'll build into the full assessment module. Similarly, curriculum design creeps in a couple of places. So what we see is a very gradual curriculum across the 3 modules of the postgraduate certificate. Similarly then, because it's an online program, each week is structured that it has its own topic. So we divide things quite neatly into manageable chunks for you. So you can see the various topics that we'll go through, and then we'll speak about assessment in a couple of minutes, but there's a very logical flow to this. The second semester then is the postgraduate diploma, and while the first semester gets us comfortable with the kind of the basic sciences of education, the second semester starts to recognize that most people coming onto this program will be on some sort of career trajectory towards a leadership position. So you'll need to know about issues around learning technologies and how to use and implement them. You'll need to know about management and leadership within clinical settings. So, if you are in charge of education, you will generally also be in charge of people and budgets, and understanding change and resistance to change and how team dynamics work is all a really important part of being a medical educator. Similarly then, what Val spoke to in terms of research and being able to design a research question, be able to interpret research, is a very, very important skill. So the second semester really is taking your professional and your career development in the context of medical education. So some really valuable modules within this, and very transferable beyond the focus of this program into all areas of your career. And what the 6th module here does is it lines you up for the master's semester. And this is a different structure where effectively you'll have defined a research question in module 6, And then you'll very much go through this research journey of, choosing your research idea, of saying, well, here's the question I'm trying to answer. What's the right methodology to do that, to designing a proposal and getting that approved, and then going through the project and writing it up. And I think Warwick are incredibly innovative in terms of how they then choose to assess the master's element of this program. So instead of a 15,000 word thesis that sits lonely on a shelf, they get you to produce a 4,000 word journal article and a conference poster. And that gives you something that is of immediate utility, that you can hopefully get published after your master's, and gives you something that you can use and that you can showcase what you have done. So it's very, very practical in terms of the assessment of the masters. So what I've dealt with here is a lot of the kind of the structure of the program, and actually I'll go back and talk about the assessment of each of these modules. So what Val spoke about in terms of reflection, for the first two modules, what we will ask you to do as you go through the modules is to start applying some of the learning theory to your teaching practice. And then at the end of the module, to give us a reflective essay on, what you experienced, what it meant to you, and how you are developing personally on foot of that. In the third module, we ask you very much to look at, well, actually, how could I change an assessment strategy that's already in place? So if you are, if you're in a hospital setting and you see the assessment that's part of a residency program, you might look at that and say, well, actually, I'm going to critique that and I'm going to look at it. Or you might want to look at adjusting an exam type of assessment. So we'll ask you to look at an assessment that's being carried out in your clinical environment and see, well, how could I improve this? And what recommendations would I make to improve this? In the second semester then, we'll actually ask you to implement something on a learning technology platform to give you a really practical sense of how to do that. We'll ask you in leadership to, again, do a critique of leadership in your organizational setting. And then the evidence and values assessment is actually writing a research question. So all of the assessment of the program is incredibly applied and very authentic in terms of what we're asking you to do. So I suppose that's a sense structurally as to what this looks like. In terms of actually, what does it feel like to go through then? We will start with a really intensive orientation program. So we'll have a week which is very interactive and sets you up for the program in terms of using the online learning environment, what supports are available, who everybody is, introduce you to your tutors, introduce you to your peers, and really get comfortable with everything before you actually start. Each week then follows a particular rhythm. So Jane, do you want to talk through some of this in terms of the activities with colleagues and the content and the weekly workshops?
Sure thing. So each week, as Dermot was saying, we will have a weekly subject topic, and that's supported by online materials and recommended reading. So you'd find that on the online learning platform. And the great thing about the online learning platform is it's accessible 24/7, so you can log in at any time. You're not restricted based on your rostering or anything like that. It's a fantastic platform, so it allows you to connect with the other students on the program. So each week we will send out an email communication to let you know what the weekly topic is, that the content is available for you to work your way through it. We'd recommend that it would take about 10 hours a week of a commitment for your studies, for independent studies, going through that online content. Then we would also usually have a weekly discussion forum post where we would pose a certain question to you on the weekly content. We might have a certain video that we'd post that we'd ask you to watch and to write your comments on the discussion forum. We might set a task where we'd ask you as a small group of maybe about 5 students to work together to overcome a challenge and to post that online. And then you would have your weekly workshop group. So there's typically about 20 students in a group, and that's hosted by your workshop facilitator. And it's a very interactive session. So you'll be discussing the topic that week, that weekly content that you've already prepared and revised. Students come with any questions that they might have over the content. And usually then we would do some sort of group activity. So that would usually involve putting you into maybe a small breakout room with 5 other students to work through an activity. So that could be something like a short debating exercise. You could be talking about planning a teaching lesson or discussing some challenges that you have in the classroom or in your own teaching. So that's kind of a general week-on-week structure that we would have.
Yeah, and I think what you're highlighting there, Jane, I think is the level of interactivity in the program is huge. You know, you will never feel like you're on this program alone. You'll never feel that you're doing things that aren't directly relevant to your current teaching and that aren't helping you become a better educator. And I think, you know, when we say kind of 10 hours a week, I think the beauty of that is the only time that you need to be specifically available at one point in time in the week is that weekly workshop. And we have, you know, we've options of Thursday evenings, Friday mornings, Friday afternoons, depending on where you are in the world and what timetable will suit you best. But the rest of the activities, you can schedule those around your other, you know, clinical, academic, and family and social commitments as well. So it is, you know, the beauty of it being an online program is while you do need to put the time in, you get to choose largely when that time is. So I think that's one of the key bits of flexibility around it. And then, you know, the assessments which we've spoken on, they're very practical. And, you know, one of the questions that often comes up is, you know, well, what's the pass rate? And it's just over 90% for get through on the first time, and there's an enormous amount of support available for people. So sorry, I just got a message, my internet was unstable. I'm not sure if I broke up there.
Just for a brief moment, you just said 90% and then it caught up with you, I think.
Okay. So yeah, so the vast majority of people get through their assessments first time around, and for those that don't, there is there's a whole support mechanism to help them through. So, and I think the weekly session with the tutoring team is probably one of the highlights of the week. The faculty that we've assembled for this program are phenomenal. As Val has said, you know, we've got the Dean at Stellenbosch, we've got faculty from Johns Hopkins, we've got faculty from Warwick, we've got faculty from all over the world that are absolute leading experts in medical education. So we're immensely proud of the team that are delivering this program with you. The timetable is here. I won't go through this in detail other than to point out that there's lots of breaks between modules. And in fact, I think we're putting an additional week's break in as opposed to what's on here between modules. The structure works really well. And I think that the benefit of this type of structure is, you know, you can do the postgraduate certificate, the postgraduate diploma. They're about six and a half months each, which you get through the program at a reasonable pace. So, and we'll send you the timetable to look at rather than try to peer at it on a screen here. But I think in terms of what it looks and feels like, so you'll be in a group with 20 participants, and as Jane has highlighted, you'll also spend quite an amount of time in a smaller group of 4 or 5. And that really creates an environment where you can explore all that you're learning and how you're applying it. The taught modules, that 6-week modular structure is really successful. It's just about the right intensity that you progress through the program quickly, but not so quickly that you're overwhelmed. And all of our student feedback would support that. The personal commitment, as we said, it's about 10 hours a week. So, you'll do an hour and a half of the e-learning content. You'll spend a couple of hours working with your group during the week. You'll have the tutorial, and then you'll be doing, additional reading. And this will be very much led by the areas you're interested in and what you want to go deeper in. So you should be able to structure this in a couple of evenings a week, and a weekend morning is what most people are doing. And again, when we look at feedback from the current students, that's the type of thing that they're saying. And about 90% are saying that they're happy with the pace of delivery. So it's just hitting that sweet spot of you're busy, but you're not overwhelmed. And there is immense support available to you. Jane leads a fantastic team of faculty that are just so invested in providing support and guidance to people on the program. In terms of, I think, in terms of what's going to make you successful at this program, then, the weekly workshops are really, really important. Being comfortable, and it'll be an adjustment for some people to get comfortable to give and receive feedback and to take that on board to kind of grow professionally. Having teaching opportunities, we've spoken a lot about how applied this program is. So you do need to be in a position that you are doing some sort of teaching. And as Jane has articulated, there's a huge variety of teaching that you can do, but being able to apply this content is really, really important. In terms of the student experience, we've brought up a handful of quotes from our latest feedback survey on the program, and they're very much highlighting some of the things that we've spoken about around discuss the value of discussions, the value of the facilitator's experience, the comfort that people have in terms of exploring, well, this is how I would apply this content in my own setting, and getting feedback from others. In terms of graduate programs, this program is running at a 95% satisfaction rate on support. We, as I said, our Warwick programs are incredibly successful. The engagement statistics are really high. The pass rates are really high. So the program structures are there to help you succeed. And I think if you are open to the sorts of kind of exploratory conversations about how you can apply learning theory to your professional life, and if you have the flexibility to put in the time commitment, there is absolutely no reason that you won't succeed really well on the program. So in terms of entry criteria, the first is, we'll need to show that you have a proficiency in English language. Now, that is not a formal English language test like IELTS. It is a personal statement that we get you to write, that Jane reviews, and we make sure that we're comfortable with the standard of English that you have. You do need to have an opportunity to teach throughout the program. And as you've seen from today's talk, it's going to be very applied, very interactive. And to be authentic in that, you're going to need to be able to discuss about what's working well and what's not working well for you. And then the prior academic requirement to come onto a master's program is a bachelor degree. So we will ask you for a copy of your degree, for that personal statement, an employer or an academic reference letter, just to say that you're a professional in good standing and that this program is relevant. And it will ask you, we'll also ask you for photo ID. There is limited spaces, as we've highlighted, that the 20-to-1 ratio on this program is incredibly important to maintain. So that is limiting the space that we have on the program, and it means that it's effectively first come, first served in terms of spaces available. The fees then, so the Master Science fee is 9,000, the Postgraduate Diploma is 5,000, and the Postgraduate Certificate is 3,750. If you do the postgraduate diploma, that includes the fee for the postgraduate certificate. If you do the Master of Science, that fee includes both of these. So these are total fees as you go up. So if you enroll to do the Masters, your fee is 9,000, not the cumulative of these. There's a couple of things in relation to fees that we're really, really proud of. The first is this fee is already a significantly reduced fee from the standard University of Warwick fee, and it is available to people in certain geographies that have lower general salaries, and we're really proud that Warwick are able to support us with that in making programs more accessible. The second is, if you apply and pay your deposit before midnight on Friday the 15th, there is a £500 reduction off that fee as well. So there's an incentive to enroll early beyond spaces filling up. There are flexible payment plans available, and you can pay your fees by semester, or most people pay their fees by monthly installment. And the education advisor that you're speaking to about coming onto the program, they'll guide you through all of the options that you have available. The final piece is that we are just so delighted that we have a full scholarship available. So there is one fully funded space on this program, and it will be granted on the basis of the personal statement that is submitted in terms of motivation to come on the program and potential impact that the program will have on the individual. But that will provide a fully funded education for the person enrolling. So we're indebted to our benefactor who has given us this, and delighted with it. Rebecca, what is the deadline for submissions for the scholarship itself?
It's the part of the Friday the 15th package. So the 500 reduction is part of the scholarship package. For those who are unsuccessful in getting the 100%, they can avail of the 500 reduction. So the deadline is the same for both.
Brilliant.
So in order to have and to be considered for the Health Impact Scholarship, you must have the fully completed application form in and the deposit payment of 500 sterling. So as Dermot said previously, the application form, it has your full bachelor qualification, and it has the 500 word personal statement and a formal identification, and the reference letter. So that's your employer reference letter, and the 500 word personal statement is what will the Health Impact Scholarship will be judged on. So we'll be shortlisting that early next week, and the director, which would be Val in this case, will be going through the shortlist and selecting the 100% scholarship winner early next week.
Yeah, so no, we're absolutely delighted to be able to offer that. It will provide an individual with an amazing career opportunity. So again, the deadline is there of this Friday if you want to submit for that. So I suppose to summarize, and I don't think there's a lot of questions on chat yet, so we'll get into whatever questions you have. It's a 6-month postgraduate certificate, or a 12-month postgraduate diploma, or a 22-month master's. The next intake is starting on the 7th of November. What's really hard to get across on a call like this is how enjoyable the program is. And Jane and Val have spoken about the interaction with the groups. They've spoken about the level of support that's available and guidance, but what doesn't come across is the fun. What doesn't come across is just how enjoyable it is to do this with a group of like-minded professionals and to build a network in other countries. It's an incredibly rewarding experience. Likewise, the University of Warwick, the qualification that you get from the university is an amazing one. They are top 10 UK university ranked. This is be it a postgraduate cert, a diploma, or a master's, the award that you get has the exact same recognition as any of their other awards. It's recognized worldwide. And as Val was articulating, this is becoming a standard requirement for people that are involved in teaching. So we are really proud to be bringing this program to such a global audience. We hope to see lots of you applying and enrolling. And yeah, it's been fantastic to be able to talk you through this morning. So, or this evening, depending on where you are. So absolutely delighted to take questions if you have them, if you want to put them in on chat, and we can hopefully answer them.
It's been quiet on chat today. Sometimes it never stops. Today it was quite quiet. Hopefully we've answered all your questions. If we haven't, just to let you know that we have a very, very dedicated team of education advisors who will be reaching out to you personally by phone after this webinar to see if you have any further questions and if you want to progress to application. But just to reiterate again that you will get an email later today or tomorrow with the recording of this event, a link to apply and a link to pay your deposit. So you're most welcome to do so. And as Dermot has already highlighted, just because it is an online program, we don't have unlimited capacity. We absolutely cap our capacity based on time zones. So we have different timings for our tutorials based on where you are on the globe. And then we have a limit of between 20 and 30. It's 20 for MedEd, isn't it, Dermot? On each program,
20.
in each region. So it is filling exceptionally fast in particular regions. So there are very, very limited places left for this intake starting at the beginning of November. So we would love to see you apply and register with us and have you in November. And we'd also love you to see you apply for the scholarship. And to do so, you must make your application for the program before midnight this Friday and pay your deposit of 500 sterling. If you are the lucky recipient of the scholarship, of course, you will get the deposit back, just to let you know.
Yeah, and there's a really good question here. So a couple of things that will come in. One is, can we delay the journey to masters if you start as a diploma? Absolutely, you can. You can do two things. You can either take a pause during the program, or you can actually exit with a diploma qualification and then come back and get recognition to do a master's within a given time period. So that's one. The degree that you're conferred with is the exact same as any other University of Warwick qualification. It's a really important question and a really important point. This is held the exact same standard as other Warwick programs. The qualification is identical. The award doesn't mention online, doesn't mention distance, doesn't mention IHEED. You simply get a master's in medical education for healthcare professionals, the exact same as any other program. The Board of Examiners of this program meets, ratifies results, and then it sends those results to the University Senate, who issue the qualification as any other program. Another one that's come in. So the duration for the MEd in Warwick, if you do it, is 3 years. And why is this only 22 months? Again, really good question. So this program, as I said, has been designed from the outset to be online, whereas the MEd program in Warwick has been designed to be a campus-based program, very much fitting around the local NHS trust's needs, and that defines the duration. So we're able to do the taught modules in that kind of 6-week format, and then you have your assessment and then breaks between them, which time-wise is more efficient than a campus-based offering and can be shorter. And the final question I see there, the program is, once it's done its first completion, due to go to the Academy of Medical Educators for recognition. The Higher Education Authority, once you get the PG cert, you will be able to apply for membership of the Higher Education Authority as well. So yeah, it's, as a Warwick program, it's got very good standing. Okay, I think that's everything I've seen on chat, Rebecca. I'm not sure if I've missed anything else.
Yeah, I think that's it, Dermot.
So look, I think, hopefully we have...
will be allowed to attend a physical convocation?
If they come back, it's a great question. And we used to have very, very enjoyable graduation ceremonies. COVID has done away with those. We hope and presume they will come back. In which case, yes, you'll be getting an award from the University of Warwick as any other student would. So, and we have previously had people fly in from all over the Gulf for our other programs. So we are assuming this will be no different. But we don't have direction from the university yet as to what they're doing on graduation ceremonies. COVID is still very much forefront in everyone's minds.
That's great. Brilliant. Thanks, Diarmuid, and thanks so much to Jane and to Val for joining us and hosting the session today. It's been absolutely brilliant. Just let you know, everybody, you will get that email with the recording and the links to apply and pay your deposit, and go ahead and apply for the scholarship if you so wish. And we would love and welcome your application. Okay,
Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.